So this is what I'm going to talk about today. 3 things I worry about, and so can you. And the reason I did this is, so I am an industry analyst. I research, and I have been doing this for quite a long time, but specifically on responsible tech and ethics for about the last 5-6 years. I started out writing about data and privacy, and that's moved over time into algorithms and sort of artificial, what we think of sort of loosely as artificial intelligence. And so when I started doing this, which would be like 2014, 2015, and really talking about this stuff, I had this kind of really interesting reaction from people, and it looked something like this. People would ask me, so what are you working on, Susan? And I'd say, I'm really interested in sort of the impact of data on our society and our business. And people would be like, excuse me, I hear my mom calling me. And they'd move slowly away. But this has really changed. And this speaks to why everybody's in the room today. We're kind of in this place now, where there's this techlash happening. And also where, frankly, this topic of responsible technology has gotten really, as the media industry says, kind of hot. So if you look at this, the spike is actually when the Oxford English Dictionary picked their word of the year for 2018, which was, techlash was a runner-up. The winner, does anybody know what the winner was? Toxic. Yeah, it was a toxic year. So I'm going to give you in like a little bit of context here. So this question about a techlash or about our kind of fear and discomfort with technology, or our ambivalence, let's say, since we're here in San Francisco, it's really not a new issue. Like it probably started the first time somebody picked up a rock to hit somebody else, several thousand years ago, and then we're like, I don't know, was that fair? Like they didn't have a rock. In the 15th century, it's probably like a group discussion about that. In the 15th century, when the Gutenberg printing press was invented, there was a Benedictine abbot named Johannes Trithemius, and he was really concerned about the invention of the printing press because he was worried that it was going to put all the monks out of business who were scribing, who were actually writing and illuminating the manuscripts. And he was also worried that it would lead to a decline in quality of Bibles. So, this is something that we've been wrestling with for a long, long time. And then when we think about sort of the responsible use of tech, or sort of the way that we think about this from a societal standpoint, there's what is it, like 50 plus years of STS, if any of you know what that is, which is Science and Technology Studies, which is specifically looking at the impact of new technologies. And that could have been new technologies actually when this became a thing in the 60s and 70s, all the way to now. So we're part of this sweep of history, and we're part of this sweep of sort of human development when it comes to technology and the way we think about it. But we've hit this inflection point now, partly because of the commercial availability of AI. And, you've probably all seen, just as one really simple example, how easy it is now to make a deep fake versus what it was like, a year or so ago. So the technology's become commercially available, the prices come down, the price of processing comes down, and all of a sudden we have tools in our hands that we didn't have before. So, there's tons and tons of history on this and tons of people working on it on the industry side. And this is something that comes from some of the work that I've done. And by the way, I'll give you an email at the end, so you can email me and I'll send you my report, which goes into like exhaustive detail on what big companies are doing around responsible use specifically of AI and other technologies. But on the industry side, just to give you a few examples, companies like Microsoft, like Salesforce, like Google, and then other companies, who are users of technology, are creating these processes and actually organizationally designing ethical processes into their organizations, all the way from research and what do we do as we publish papers, all the way through to sort of how they build culture and community. So that's happening. And there's support and there are resources in education, NGOs, tons and tons of organizations. This is obviously not comprehensive, but just pointing at a couple of different things that are happening. There's the Markkula Center, for example, at Santa Clara University, specifically focused on applied ethics. So there's a lot of work happening in this community. But I'm worried about three things, and I'm going to tell you sort of two things that I think we shouldn't be doing, and one thing I think we really should be doing as we hit this point, because I think we're at a very, very critical point right now for a lot of different reasons. The first thing I worry about is trendiness. This has become a very trendy topic. And I feel like, and I have seen a lot of people who come to me now and say, how can I also be an AI ethicist? And the way that I answer them is, I am not an AI ethicist. Okay, I don't have a degree in philosophy. I don't even have a degree in machine learning or data science. I just play one on TV. I'm here to talk about the issues that I'm seeing based on, qualitative research that I'm doing across multiple stakeholders and multiple institutions. And I think we really need to resist this. We need to resist this because this is going to be really, really hard work. The next thing I worry about is Columbusing. And for any of you who don't know what Columbusing is, it's pretending that you, or thinking that you invented something or discovered something that has existed forever. So you may have seen on Twitter, there are some tech entrepreneurs who have all of a sudden discovered sociology, and things like that, and the history of science. And I don't mean to, and those of you who giggled because you know who I'm talking about, I mean, that person, has good intentions, right? But we've all been in our own bubbles. And when we're in our own bubbles, whether it's a white Western European bubble and we sail across the sea and we find this land that we think we've discovered and oops, people have been living here for thousands of years, it has consequences that are horrific. And so those of us who are in this room who are going to be discovering things, I just implore you to be thinking about the fact that there's probably work that's been done on this before, and that community making is critical. The third thing is the zero sum. And the zero sum is this. Let's pretend that this side of the room is all about innovation, like we're in an accelerator, okay? You guys are all the innovators. You've innovated like the hell out of everything. And you guys are all the responsible tech people who are thinking about the unintended consequences of technology. You never talk to each other. The conversation about innovation has nothing to do with responsible tech. The conversation about responsible tech has very little to do with how we're going to innovate. And that needs to change. So here are my three things. The first thing is resist the trendiness. It's going to pass. This is going to be very quaint as of 2020, 2021, right? It's going to be table stakes. The second thing is just a first step. And I don't know if Mia's in the room, but there are and this is just women, okay? And I am not talking about just women. I'm talking about trans and non-binary folks. I'm talking about people of color. I'm talking about disability advocacy community. Any group that has been unfairly disenfranchised, targeted, whatever it may be, these folks have been doing work in this area for many, many, many years. And there are some wonderful people here, but it's just a first step. And the next thing is the zero sum. Since we're in an accelerator, my request to you, my plea to you, is that we think about what happens in this little area between trust and innovation. Our business models that we're struggling with are because in the early days of the internet, VCs could only imagine business models built on eyeballs, and that's all they would fund. Ask Ethan Zuckerman, ask anybody who studies the beginnings of the internet. So we're living with that now. We're living with the attention economy now. What are the other economies we can build that put people at the center? So that, I think, is a really important thing to consider. So Tim O'Brien's a guy at Microsoft who actually has what looks like an incredibly glamorous, but is actually not a really glamorous job, which is that he runs he is one of the people at Microsoft who really thinks deeply about how AI in particular can be used ethically and responsibly. And when he says we need to change too, he's not just talking about Microsoft, he's talking about us. So we all, from our positions of privilege, from our positions of experience, we all need to kind of give ourselves a pretty hard look. And, believe me, I've been trying to do this myself. That is it. If you want to get a copy of my report, email me, susan@altimetergroup.com. If you don't have time to take a picture because Jamie's waving me off, come find me at a break. Thank you.